The U.S. Post Office is in pretty big trouble. Even to prior to the coronavirus outbreak, the Postal Service was having some financial issues. And now here comes Donald Trump, who apparently wants to use the coronavirus to strike the final blow against the post office because Amazon or something. All right, so now the post office, as I said before, they've been hit pretty hard by coronavirus. The service itself projects a loss of $2 billion a month during the crisis of COVID-19. Now, that has led to, of course, a funding shortfall. This is something that um, they couldn't absorb. And so, what they're doing is that they tried to get some extra funding during the coronavirus response package. That was that $2.2 trillion package that passed through Congress. That includes unemployment insurance extensions or expansions, the $1,200 stimulus checks, and up to $5 trillion in corporate welfare. Yeah. So now, uh, among the discussions was a bailout package for the post office. In fact, back on March 24th, in a letter to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, House members Carolyn Maloney, Jerry Connolly said that the USPS might run out of cash by June, and it urged him to include $25 billion in aid in the congressional stimulus bill that, again, had passed Congress. Now, Connolly said in that letter, quote, "We are barreling towards a catastrophic collapse if we don't take action." Now, what did the White House do? Well, they would only agree to permit the post office to borrow an additional $10 billion from the Department of Treasury in order to cover its COVID-19 related shortfall. That was at the direct order of Donald Trump, according to a senior administration official. $10 billion. They said, look, if you ask for any more, if you try to get any sort of bailout from this package, right, then I'm going to veto the package. He would kill it. The Post source said, quote, "We told them very clear that the president was not going to sign the bill if funding for postal service was in it." An official from President Trump's administration told the Washington Post when discussing the $2 trillion coronavirus relief package. "I don't know if he used a V-bomb, but the president was not going to sign it, and we told him that." Well, if you're not going to sign something as president, then that would be a veto. So I'm just saying. Now, you might be wondering why Donald Trump was refusing to fund the post office. I mean, we all rely on the post office. I mean, we all get mail. A lot of us get packages. Not everything comes from FedEx or UPS. Sometimes the post office handles a lot of those packages and actually makes them quite a bit of money. But here's the thing: Donald Trump hates the post office because of personal grievances. Now, the Republican Party also hates the post office, and let me get to that. Republicans have been trying to privatize the post office for a long time. Part of the plan to do that was to destroy the post office from within, to make sure that it runs out of money. So now, back in 2006, Republicans passed a bill called the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act of 2006. Now, a lot of people look at that bill and think, well, that's insane, the provisions. Well, what's insane about it? The law requires the post office, which receives no taxpayer subsidies, by the way. The post office is not funded by taxpayers at all. It is funded completely on services, mainly stamps, postage, in certain business deals with group companies like Amazon, Fed, and other shippers, and so they don't get funded, and yet what they have to do is that they have to pre-fund its retirees' health benefits up to the year 2056. Okay, now this costs an estimated $5 billion per year for the post office. So they're barely operating in the black, right? And then they get this gigantic burden put on them to cover them. This is nothing that, this is something that FedEx and UPS don't have to do. No one else has to do this. Only the post office. So that's a problem, right? If they didn't have this cost, they would actually turn a small profit, right? But that's what the Republicans did to it, and of course they've been like, "Oh, look at how terrible the post office is doing. I can't believe we have stuff like that. Why don't we just privatize it? Why don't we let FedEx and UPS do it?" Well, in order to, and this is what would happen, right? In order to send a letter to somebody through FedEx, it would cost roughly about $15 just for a letter. Whereas all you have to do to send a letter now is buy a stamp, which is like 50 cents or less. Yeah. Now, that's Republicans. So getting back to Trump, this is normal Trump pettiness. Now, Trump's disregard for the post office seems to connect to his disdain for Jeff Bezos, CEO and president of the online retail company Amazon. Bezos also owns the Washington Post, in which Trump hates. Now, look, I also don't like Amazon. I'm also not a fan of their business practices. I'm not a fan of Jeff Bezos, and I'm not a fan of the Washington Post. So I'm very clear about that, right? But what does the Washington Post, Amazon, and Jeff Bezos have to do with the post office? Well, he thinks the post office is getting ripped off by Amazon, which they're actually not. Trump, though, claims that higher internet shipping rates imposed on companies like Amazon, FedEx, and UPS would increase the USPS's budget and help its 600,000 plus workers. However, it might not work that way. The director of physical infrastructure at the Government Accountability Office told the Post that rate hikes would likely lead to shipping businesses looking elsewhere or creating their own delivery methods. But here's the thing. That deal with Amazon is actually beneficial for the post office. They don't lose any money on it. And in fact, parcel delivery is where the post office makes its most money. Regular mail, that's where the post office actually takes its biggest losses because they deliver everywhere, even to places where, obviously UPS, FedEx, nowhere else will go. The post office is, has to deliver to those places that are way, way out of the way. And of course, that's why people rely on the post office. That's why it's so important, because you have people in rural areas that wouldn't get serviced otherwise. And so it's really important that you have the post office to be able to do that, because FedEx and UPS, they're not doing that. They're not going to go out and deliver to the sticks. Okay. It's just not going to happen. And so that's where the post office, and the reason is, of course, because they don't make as much money off that. They take losses. But the post office, when it comes to parcel delivery, that's where they make their money. That's how they stay afloat. And so making that deal with, making deals with Amazon, FedEx, UPS for like last mile delivery is actually pretty beneficial to them. But Donald Trump's irrational. He's driven by irrational hatred of everything Washington Post, because Washington Post says mean things about him. Well, Washington Post says mean things about Bernie Sanders too. They publish 16 negative articles in 16 hours. Amazon doesn't pay their taxes. Those are legitimate grievances. For Trump, they say, actual facts against Trump, and he hates that. And so that's the problem there, right? And so here you have, Republicans that are still trying to kill the post office. And now you have Donald Trump, the president of the United States, joining them and not bailing them out. That is a real disaster. Once people, if that happens and the post office is allowed to crash and not be able to fulfill its obligations laid out in the Constitution to do what it's supposed to do, deliver mail, well, that's going to be an absolute disaster for this country. And we have to save the post office. Now, one thing is, since they're not getting bailed out by Trump anytime soon, just buying a sheet of stamps should be able to cover the shortfall until this is over. And I guess if we all do our part, we can protect the post office against morons like Trump. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.